Thousands of Iranians hit the streets in support of Hezbollah, chanting anti-Israeli slogans and protesting Israel's attacks in Lebanon. Iran denies playing a role in this whole Mideast crisis, but a lot of people don't buy that. Let's bring in Mark Hitchcock. He's the author of the new book, Iran, the Coming Crisis. Mark, do you buy this Iranian story? We don't have anything to do with Hezbollah. I hardly even know them.
No, I don't buy it at all. Whenever you look at the situation over there today, really what you see is the fingerprints of Iran all over this when you connect the dots. You have Iranian missiles hitting the Israeli warship. You have Iranian security advisors or military advisors there. You have the fact that really Iran founded Hezbollah. They fund Hezbollah with $100 million to $250 million a year. And also the timing of this. It happened the very day that Iran was supposed to be giving their response to the incentive package from the Western nations. So to me, when you connect the dots, the fingerprints of Iran are all over this situation.
But is Iran being just annoying, provocative, or is Hezbollah a strategic arm of Iranian policy against Israel and the United States?
Well, Iran, I believe, clearly is an arm of Iran. Hezbollah is an arm of Iran. They're a surrogate, a proxy. And again, I believe they're trying to divert attention away from this nuclear crisis. Iran desperately wants nuclear weapons. They're on a quest for those. Their leader, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, has said that nuclear power and nuclear weapons is their inalienable right. And so I believe that the actions of Hezbollah are a smokescreen. They're a diversion from the crisis with Iran, from their nuclear crisis.
Hey, Mark, let's bring in Simon Marks, Fox News correspondent in the area for a lot of these big stories. So, Simon, there's an awful lot of talk about Iran, and one nonetheless looks at the screen and sees pictures of rockets falling on Israel and shells falling on Lebanon, and Iran's not in the picture. Should we be focusing a little tighter on where the shells and rockets are falling?
Well, I think that that's true, John, but at the same time, there's no question that the finger of blame is being very widely pointed at Tehran. The Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert today formally said that he believes that Iran helped coordinate Hezbollah's seizure of those 2 Israeli soldiers. The U.S., European nations, and Israel, of course, accused the Iranians of arming Hezbollah. The Iranians are putting out mixed messages on this. Over the weekend, Iran's foreign ministry said Iran has not been supplying weaponry to Hezbollah. Indeed, it said Hezbollah is so strong it no longer needs Iranian or Syrian help. And yet today, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, addressing some of those demonstrators that you saw a few minutes ago, was saying that Hezbollah is capable of striking at the whole of Israel, raising the question of precisely how the Iranians know that if they weren't involved in supplying Hezbollah with some pretty sophisticated weaponry.
Mark, we are seeing some missiles, guided missiles, in the possession of Hezbollah that seem like they have to have come from Iran. Either that or Hezbollah has opened up direct contact with the Chinese or other missile builders. Isn't that proof enough?
Well, I believe it is. When you see these Chinese-made missiles that are coming from Iran to Hezbollah, directly to them. Again, Hezbollah was founded by Iran. They're funded by Iran. They have troops there. Again, when you just put all these things together and you have these Iranian missiles, one of them that hit the Israeli warship, again, to me, Iran is clearly a player in this. I think they're the driving force behind it. And ultimately, what we're going to see is there's going to have to be a showdown between the West and Iran.
Simon, have you seen any signs that that showdown is shaping up?
I think that there are signs that some in the Iranian government are certainly preparing for that showdown and are perfectly happy to see the events of the past week move the country's nuclear standoff with the West off the world's front pages. But we, in the course of the past few days, have also been talking to Iranians in Tehran who have been expressing concern about the way in which they believe the government is flirting with the possibility of bringing war right to their doorsteps in Iran. So the Iranian government's freedom of movement here is limited by domestic opinion inside the country. A large number of Iranians do not want to see their country sucked into this conflict by their own government.
Mark, there was a point made a little earlier by one of our earlier guests that Hezbollah may have miscalculated here and assumed they could grab these Israeli soldiers and affect a prisoner exchange and not have the world crash in on them. Is that your estimation of what happened?
No, I don't think so. I think Hezbollah knew what they were doing in this. Again, I think they're going and taking their orders from Tehran. They believe that they could create this diversion. And really, the Iranian president has said very clearly in recent days that Israel needs to be wiped off the map. In fact, this last week he compared Israel to Hitler. He's denied the Holocaust, yet he compares Israel to Hitler. And he said also that the Zionist regime is a dried, rotten tree that must be eliminated by one storm. And he also believes that he can hasten the end times and hasten the coming of an Islamic messianic figure by creating an atmosphere of cosmic bloodshed and war and violence. So I think the more chaos there is, the more violence there is, the more diversion there is from Iran's program, the better the Iranian leaders believe it will be for them.
Mark Hitchcock, author of Iran, The Coming Crisis, and of course our very own Simon Marks joined us for this. Thanks to both of you. My next guest says